The galaxy had always been a place of stability and order, ruled by the Galactic Alliance, a union of countless species, all bound together by a singular goal, peace. In this vast, interconnected universe, there was no room for disorder, for dissonance. All species knew their place and respected the boundaries set by the Alliance. Humanity, however, was the one glaring exception. At first, humans were just another fledgling species, their technological advancements primitive compared to the might of the Alliance's most dominant races. They had proven useful as mercenaries, laborers, and occasional diplomats. But even in these roles, there was something about humanity that made other species uneasy, a stubborn, unyielding spirit that refused to conform to the idea of peace the Alliance sought to enforce. It started subtly. A few isolated incidents where human soldiers questioned orders, where human diplomats expressed opinions that were too independent for the Alliance's liking. These small acts of rebellion went unnoticed at first, dismissed as mere growing pains. But the cracks began to deepen. Humanity's refusal to accept the pacifistic mandates of the Alliance wasn't just an ideological disagreement, it was a statement of defiance. The tipping point came during the Zinter crisis. The Zinter, a peaceful, aquatic race, had been under the Alliance's protection for centuries. Their oceans were being ravaged by pollution, and the Alliance had offered little more than bureaucracy and endless negotiations. Humanity, on the other hand, had the technology to cleanse the waters, but the Alliance refused to allow it. It wasn't their place, they argued. The Zinter must find their own way. The humans saw it differently. A human fleet, led by Admiral Grace Taylor, moved into the Zinter system without the Alliance's permission. With the precision of a well-oiled machine, they deployed state-of-the-art filtration systems that began cleaning the Zinter's oceans within hours. The Alliance, furious at this blatant act of insubordination, sent their forces to halt the operation. When the human fleet refused to back down, the first battle between the Galactic Alliance and humanity began, one that would forever alter the course of history. The skirmish was intense. The Alliance had more firepower, but humanity had something far more dangerous: resilience. The Alliance ships struggled to keep up with the human tactics, their rigid formations easily disrupted by the unpredictability of human warfare. But it wasn't just strategy. It was the tenacity of humanity. The Alliance had underestimated the humans' willingness to fight for what they believed in, and that, more than any weapon or ship, would become their greatest strength. Admiral Taylor watched the battle unfold from her flagship, the Elysium. Her face was calm, but inside, she felt the weight of her actions. This was no longer a simple humanitarian mission, it was a declaration of war. As the battle raged on, a transmission came through, one that would change everything. It was from General Coran, the head of the Alliance military, an alien of imposing stature and ruthless ambition. "You think you can challenge the Galactic Alliance, human?" Coran's voice crackled through the comms, his tone dripping with condescension. "You are nothing but a parasite, clinging to the fabric of our civilization. We will crush you, and you will regret ever defying us." Admiral Taylor's lips curled into a slight smile. She knew this moment was inevitable. The Alliance had underestimated humanity for far too long. What they didn't understand was that humans didn't back down when faced with impossible odds. They fought, and they fought hard. "We'll see about that, Coran," she muttered under her breath. The next few hours were chaotic. The human fleet had already begun its retreat, but not before inflicting significant damage to the Alliance ships. The battle had been a victory, but a Pyrrhic one. Humanity had sent a message that could not be ignored. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The Alliance, once thought invincible, was no longer the undisputed power. Humanity had risen up, and the war for survival had begun. The Galactic Alliance had no choice but to act swiftly. The humans would either submit, or they would be wiped out. Back on Earth, President Elena Vargas stood before the Council. Her face was grim. "We've made our stand. We can't go back now. We either win this war, or we perish. But if there's one thing I know about humanity, it's that we never give up." The room fell silent. The future of humanity hung in the balance. The battle for survival had only just begun. The news of humanity's defiance against the Galactic Alliance spread like wildfire across the galaxy. From the core worlds of the Alliance to the farthest reaches of the outer territories, there was one prevailing question: could humanity actually survive a full-scale war with the most powerful alliance the universe had ever known? On Earth, the response was immediate and unified. President Elena Vargas, a leader who had always advocated for diplomacy and peaceful coexistence, now found herself at the head of a war machine she hadn't been prepared for. Yet, there was no time for hesitation. The Alliance was coming, and they would show no mercy. In the heart of the United Earth Military Command, UEMC, General Jackson Hayes stood at a strategic table, his mind racing as he watched the status reports pour in. "We've just engaged in a full-scale battle with a military far superior to ours," he said to his staff, pacing back and forth. "And yet, we've come out of it alive. That's not luck. That's humanity." The UEMC had never been equipped for galactic-scale warfare, and their resources were stretched thin. But they had something that the Alliance didn't: heart. Humanity had faced overwhelming odds before and emerged victorious. The spirit of the people, their relentless drive to survive, to thrive against all odds, would be their greatest weapon. Across the globe, cities began mobilizing. Industries that had once been devoted to civilian projects were repurposed to build advanced weapons, ships, and defensive systems. Young men and women enlisted by the thousands, eager to defend their world. The human race was united by a single, burning desire: survival. At the same time, the Alliance was not idle. The Zinter crisis had exposed a fundamental weakness: humanity's refusal to bow to the collective power of the galaxy. But the Alliance's reaction was swift and brutal. Ships and soldiers were mobilized from every corner of the galaxy, an overwhelming force poised to crush humanity's rebellion once and for all. In the High Council chambers of the Galactic Alliance's capital, Supreme Chancellor Iskra Oren, a stoic and calculating leader, addressed her fellow counselors. "This is no longer a minor insurrection," she said, her voice cold. "It is a war. Humanity has crossed the line, and we cannot allow their actions to go unpunished. We must make an example of them." A flicker of doubt passed through the room, but it was quickly quashed. The Alliance had always been built on unity, on the strength of its numbers and the weight of its history. If humanity thought they could defeat such a force, they were gravely mistaken. Koran, the Alliance's top military general, stood at attention, his towering frame imposing even in the council chambers. "We will eradicate them. Their resistance will be crushed within a matter of weeks. This will be a demonstration of our power." But there was something in Koran's voice, something that gave the other council members pause. They had all seen the reports from the battle above Zinter. The human fleet may have been outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity and ingenuity that the Alliance wasn't prepared for. Humanity's ability to adapt, to turn every disadvantage into an advantage, was unlike any enemy they had ever encountered. Koran was confident, yes, but even he knew that humanity's spirit could not be underestimated. Back on Earth, the response to the Alliance's threat was clear. General Hayes had rallied the people, turning the desperation of war into a rallying cry that echoed across every corner of the planet. "We stand united, not as one nation, but as one species. The Alliance thinks they can crush us, but they don't know us. We fight for our homes, for our families, for our future. And we will not back down." Admiral Taylor, the hero of the Zinter skirmish, stood alongside him, her eyes burning with determination. "We've made it this far by thinking like the underdogs. We're used to fighting from the margins, and that's where we're most dangerous. The Alliance may have the numbers, but they'll never have the heart that humanity has." The message was clear: humanity would fight with everything it had. The Alliance had misjudged the resolve of humankind, and now, as the battle lines were drawn, the war for survival escalated. A global mobilization effort, combined with the human drive to overcome all obstacles, put them on a war footing unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. In the coming days, Earth's skies were filled with ships, some old, some hastily constructed, but all carrying the same unspoken promise: humanity was not going to surrender. President Vargas addressed the world from the UEMC's command center, her voice resolute. Today, we stand at the brink of the greatest challenge our species has ever faced. But make no mistake, we are not just fighting for survival. We are fighting for our right to exist in this galaxy on our own terms. As Earth readied itself for war, Admiral Taylor took command of the newly formed Earth Defense Fleet, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with the Alliance. She knew the stakes. This would not be a simple battle. It would be a war of survival, and humanity's greatest strength, its refusal to give up, would be tested like never before. But there was one thing Taylor knew for sure: the Galactic Alliance had made a grave mistake when they underestimated humanity. The time had come. The rallying cry had been heard. And the battle for survival was about to become the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. The day the Galactic Alliance arrived at Earth's borders, it felt as if time itself held its breath. The sheer scale of the fleet that appeared on Earth's radar was enough to make even the most battle-hardened commanders pause. Dozens of massive warships, accompanied by hundreds of smaller vessels, drifted silently through space, a tidal wave of military might, each one a testament to the power the Alliance wielded. Their arrival signaled the beginning of the end for humanity, or so the Alliance thought. Admiral Taylor stood on the bridge of the Elysium, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the enemy fleet. The sheer size of it was intimidating, but she felt no fear, only a fire that burned brighter with each passing second. Earth's defenses were modest compared to the Alliance's might, but she was confident in one thing: humanity didn't need overwhelming strength to win. They had ingenuity, and they had resolve. "Admiral, the Alliance fleet is entering orbit," said Commander Rook, her second-in-command, his voice tense but steady. "They're not signaling any intention to communicate. It's clear they're preparing for an immediate assault." Taylor nodded, her mind racing through tactical options. "We've got one chance at this, Rook. We hit them hard, hit them fast, and throw them off balance. No hesitation." Across Earth, military forces mobilized. The human fleet, though outnumbered and outgunned, was ready. It was a ragtag assembly of old warships, makeshift defenses, and hastily designed weaponry. But there was one thing the human fleet had in abundance: a burning desire to protect their homes, their families, their future. The first shots were fired not by the humans, but by the Alliance. A single devastating volley of plasma missiles shot toward Earth, their trajectories clear. Earth's defense systems lit up as they intercepted most of the incoming fire, but a few missiles still broke through, exploding over the cities below. The sound of distant explosions rang through the atmosphere, and the people of Earth knew the battle had begun. Admiral Taylor wasted no time. She issued the command to launch the human fleet into battle formation, a chaotic, unpredictable pattern that the Alliance wasn't prepared for. Unlike the rigid military formations favored by the Alliance, humanity's fleet moved in a disordered, asymmetrical way. It was madness, yes, but it was the kind of madness that had won wars throughout human history. "Fire on their lead ship," Taylor ordered. "All cannons, all fighters, now." The Elysium unleashed its primary weapon, a concentrated pulse of energy that streaked toward the nearest Alliance ship, the Talon, a behemoth of a vessel that was the flagship of the invasion fleet. The pulse hit with the force of a small sun exploding, sending shockwaves through the space around it. The Talon shook violently, and sparks erupted from its hull as shields flickered. But the Alliance wasn't done. Within moments, the remaining ships in the fleet retaliated with overwhelming force. Missiles rained down on human ships, tearing through the fragile hulls of older vessels. Human fighters scrambled to engage, darting in and out of fire with unparalleled agility, their pilots pushing the limits of their ships' capabilities. In the midst of this chaos, General Hayes watched the battle unfold from his command post on Earth. The ground shook as each explosion rocked the planet, but he remained calm. This wasn't about a quick victory, it was about survival. Humanity had to endure, outlast the initial onslaught. If they could keep the Alliance off balance long enough, if they could make them question their ability to win, then humanity might just have a chance. We need to keep them distracted, Hayes muttered to his officers. Pull the bulk of their forces into the outer defense zones. Give Taylor a fighting chance to find a weak spot. Meanwhile, aboard the Elysium, Admiral Taylor was proving to be a master tactician. She had already calculated the movements of the enemy fleet, predicting their next move based on the patterns they had followed in the opening stages of the battle. A single human ship, the Valiant, an older frigate, darted toward the right flank of the Alliance's main force, drawing fire away from the more vulnerable human ships. It was a move that cost the Valiant dearly, but it worked. The Alliance's attention shifted. You've got their attention now, Rook said, a smirk crossing his face. Time to show them what humanity's made of. Prepare for Phase 2, Taylor replied, her voice cold and determined. This isn't just about surviving, it's about proving that we're not going down without a fight. As the battle raged on, humanity's fleet began to exploit small weaknesses in the Alliance's tactics. With each passing moment, the human forces became more unpredictable, more daring. They fought not just to defend, but to overwhelm and confuse their enemies. And it was working. The Alliance fleet, initially confident in its superiority, began to show signs of strain. Ships were scattered, formations were broken, and the once unstoppable assault began to falter. But the Alliance was not about to give up. General Coran, aboard the Talon, barked orders to regroup and launch a full offensive. This ends now, he growled, his fists clenched. In the heat of battle, as both sides clashed in a spectacular show of firepower, one human fighter, piloted by Lieutenant Olivia Cruz, made a desperate but brilliant maneuver. She dove straight into the heart of the Alliance's formation, narrowly avoiding enemy fire as she engaged a series of torpedoes that struck the Talon directly. It wasn't enough to destroy the flagship, but it sent a powerful message. The Alliance had underestimated humanity. They had not anticipated the fierce determination that burned in every human heart. For the first time, the Alliance began to doubt their assumption that victory would be swift and easy. The first clash between the Galactic Alliance and humanity was far from over. But it had become clear, this was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy, and humanity was not ready to back down. The initial clash between the Galactic Alliance and humanity had proven something critical. Despite overwhelming odds, humanity was capable of more than just survival. They were capable of innovation, unpredictability, and sacrifice. But the battle was far from won, and the Alliance's response to humanity's resilience was swift and unforgiving. In the days that followed the first battle, the Alliance regrouped. Their fleets were battered, but their resolve was unshaken. General Coran, having witnessed firsthand the human capacity for unconventional warfare, now knew the Alliance would have to adapt if they were to succeed. The Alliance military strategists, once certain of a quick victory, were now scrambling to develop new tactics that would deal with the human unpredictability. On Earth, Admiral Taylor and her crew knew that they had bought themselves only a brief respite. They couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. Humanity had been pushed to the brink once before, but this time, there was more at stake than just survival. If humanity didn't come up with a plan to disrupt the Alliance's overwhelming advantage, their success in the first clash would amount to nothing. Taylor stood at the command center, studying a map of the solar system. "They'll come again," she said, her voice grave. "And when they do, we need to be ready. We can't just keep reacting, we need to start taking the fight to them." General Hayes was there too, watching the same tactical displays. "We've been playing defense so far. It's time to shift the momentum." "But how? Our fleet is still vastly outnumbered." Taylor's eyes narrowed. "We may not have the numbers, but we do have something they don't, knowledge of this terrain. We know Earth and its moons better than anyone else. We can use that." The decision was made. Humanity's next move would be a guerrilla-style war, a series of hit-and-run tactics designed to sap the strength of the Alliance and drag them into drawn-out, resource-draining battles on humanity's terms. Earth's fleet would split into small, agile units, hiding in the shadows of asteroids and moons, launching surprise attacks, and then retreating into the depths of space before the Alliance could retaliate. "We'll make it cost them more than they can bear," Taylor said, determination in her eyes. "And we'll do it with the one thing they can't understand, our will to fight." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Alliance fleet, General Koran was seething. The human tactics were an irritant, not something he had anticipated. They were wasting his time, forcing his fleet into a war of attrition that would eventually lead to humanity's collapse. Or so he believed. "We have to crush them completely," Koran said, pacing in the strategy room of the Talon. "Take away their resolve. Their so-called guerrilla tactics are nothing more than desperation. If we strike at their heart, we will break them." Supreme Chancellor Iskra Oren, who had remained silent until then, spoke. "Their heart is not in their cities or their military. Their heart is their people. We strike at their spirit, and they will fall." Koran nodded, understanding the sentiment, but his focus remained sharp on the battlefield. "Then we'll make an example of their largest population centers. Wipe out the symbols of their resistance, and they'll fold." But the Alliance underestimated humanity's capacity for defiance. On Earth, President Vargas had been informed of the Alliance's plan to target civilian populations. Her response was swift: she refused to let her people be intimidated. "We will not cower," she declared in a global address. "We will fight for every life, every family, and every corner of our world. And we will not allow the Alliance to take it from us." With the human fleet now operating as a dispersed, highly mobile force, they became ghosts in the dark, a nuisance to the Alliance, who had never fought an enemy like them. The larger, more powerful ships struggled to match the smaller, faster human vessels. Each engagement cost the Alliance more than they were willing to admit, and their pursuit of humanity was becoming a game of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, the people of Earth rallied around the call to arms. The war had become something more than just a defense of Earth, it was now a symbol of humanity's defiance against the galactic status quo. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, and civilians alike worked together, improvising weapons and technology that helped level the playing field. Humanity's strength was not in the tools they had, but in their sheer will to innovate and adapt. One of the pivotal moments came when humanity's engineers discovered a vulnerability in the Alliance's fleet, an obscure flaw in their energy shields. It was a discovery that would change the course of the war. The human forces, using their guerrilla tactics, began to exploit this weakness, launching precision strikes that tore into Alliance ships with stunning efficiency. One by one, the Alliance's fleet began to crumble under the onslaught, as the human forces, emboldened by their success, pushed forward with renewed vigor. But the Alliance wasn't backing down. Koran's tactics grew more ruthless with each failed assault. He unleashed an orbital bombardment on Mars, one of humanity's major military strongholds. The devastation was catastrophic, but it only fueled humanity's resolve. Rather than submitting, Earth's forces became more determined, more united in their fight to protect what they held dear. As the war continued, it was clear that humanity had not only survived, it had begun to turn the tide. The Alliance, so confident in its invincibility, was slowly being driven to the edge of defeat. The final battle for the galaxy had not yet been fought, but it was becoming clear that humanity would not be erased so easily. The war had entered a critical phase. Humanity, once a mere afterthought to the Galactic Alliance, had now become a genuine threat. The Alliance's military might, once overwhelming, was being systematically drained by the relentless human tactics. The fight had moved beyond tactics, it was now a battle for the soul of the galaxy. On Earth, the devastation caused by the orbital bombardment of Mars had left deep scars. Mars, once a thriving colony and military stronghold, was now a graveyard of ruined cities, scorched landscapes, and shattered infrastructure. The Alliance believed this would break humanity's spirit, that the sight of their second home reduced to rubble would make them surrender. But instead of bowing to the Alliance's terror, the human spirit only burned brighter. Mars had become a symbol of defiance, a rallying cry for the people of Earth and the colonies. President Vargas had addressed her people in a moving speech, one that echoed across the planets and in the hearts of all who had heard it, the destruction of Mars is not a defeat, it is a reminder. We are not just fighting for survival, we are fighting for the future of our children, for the future of every colony, every world we call home. And we will not let it be taken from us. The human resistance had expanded, no longer confined to Earth but spreading across the colonies. The military leaders, led by General Hayes and Admiral Taylor, coordinated increasingly bold raids, targeting key Alliance supply lines and infrastructure. These were no longer small guerrilla actions, they were large, coordinated attacks designed to cripple the Alliance's ability to wage war. But as humanity pushed forward, the price of resistance began to mount. The Alliance, now enraged by the continued defiance, escalated its tactics. Charon, embittered by his inability to crush humanity's spirit, began deploying devastating new weapons, a class of high-energy orbital cannons capable of wiping entire cities off the map in an instant. His orders were simple: destroy everything that could fuel humanity's resistance. Demoralize them. Break them. And so, entire cities fell. Colonies on the edges of the solar system were obliterated. Earth itself, once the cradle of humankind, began to feel the crushing weight of the Alliance's fury. The Alliance believed that the sheer devastation they unleashed would cause humanity to fracture, to crumble under the weight of grief and fear. But they underestimated something they could never understand: the strength of the human will to survive. Admiral Taylor, her fleet stretched to the limit, knew they couldn't keep fighting the way they had. The battles were taking a toll, on the ships, on the soldiers, and on the civilians who were caught in the crossfire. The war was bleeding humanity dry. But she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. We need to hit them harder, she said during a tense meeting with her top commanders. We need to take the fight directly to their core worlds. General Hayes, who had been working closely with human engineers, had a plan. We've been studying their warships, their tactics. The Alliance's command structure is centralized. If we can take out their communication hubs, we can cripple their coordination. If we hit them where it hurts, we might have a shot at forcing them into negotiations. Taylor looked at him, her face a mask of resolve. We've already pushed them to the brink once. Now, we take the fight to their home. The plan was set in motion, and the human forces launched their most daring raid yet. The target, the Alliance's Central Command Station, located on the capital planet of Xilones. If humanity could destroy this critical facility, they would fracture the Alliance's coordination and expose the weakness in their leadership. As humanity's fleet advanced toward Xilones, however, they knew they were walking into a trap. The Alliance had anticipated this move. Charon, now fully aware of humanity's tactics, had prepared a counteroffensive, a massive fleet waiting in ambush, ready to strike when the humans were at their most vulnerable. And so, the battle for Xilones began. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the capital system, where they were met with a wall of firepower from the Alliance's heavily fortified defenses. The skies above Xilones were lit with explosions as human ships and Alliance vessels clashed in a violent, brutal display of destruction. The humans had no choice but to push forward, fighting tooth and nail to reach their target. Amid the chaos, a small group of human commandos boarded a transport shuttle, prepared for the most dangerous mission of all, infiltrating the Central Command Station and delivering the final blow to the Alliance's war effort. Led by Lieutenant Cruz, the same fighter pilot who had scored a direct hit on the Talon in the first battle, they made their way through the defense lines, fighting their way to the heart of the Alliance's operations. But the cost of the raid was steep. As the shuttle neared its target, it was struck by a barrage of enemy fire, and the commandos were forced to crash land just outside the central hub. They fought their way through the capital streets, the tension and fear palpable in every step. But when they finally reached their destination, they found themselves face to face with the most guarded facility in the galaxy, the Alliance's core command center. Meanwhile, Admiral Taylor and General Hayes led the remaining forces in a desperate, last-ditch effort to keep the Alliance distracted while the commandos carried out their mission. The fate of the entire war rested on this one final push. With the commandos inside the facility, the explosive charges were set. The timer counted down. And then, with a deafening explosion, the heart of the Alliance military shattered. The blow sent shockwaves through the Alliance. The central command structure was in ruins, and their coordination was thrown into chaos. For the first time, the Alliance's leaders had no clear path forward. But victory came at a cost. The battle for Xilones had been one of the bloodiest humanity had fought yet. Lives had been lost, and entire fleets had been sacrificed. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven one undeniable truth: they could bleed, they could suffer, but they would never bow. The destruction of the Central Command on Xilones sent shockwaves through the Galactic Alliance. In the days that followed, chaos reigned. Communications between Alliance fleets faltered, orders became delayed, and the once unified force began to splinter. It was a blow from which they might never recover, but General Coran, unwilling to admit defeat, refused to allow the Alliance to crumble. "We will not let a few human insurgents dictate the future of the galaxy," Coran declared, his voice cold and resolute. "They want war? We will give them war on a scale they have never imagined." The Supreme Chancellor, Iskra Oren, stood by his side, but her expression was one of frustration. "We have already lost too much," she said. "We cannot afford another devastating loss. If we cannot unite our forces, we will face a collapse. I suggest we reconsider negotiations." But Coran, consumed by pride and the desire to avenge the Alliance's early losses, was adamant. "There will be no negotiations. Humanity must be crushed before they can embolden the rest of the galaxy with their insolence." As the Alliance rallied its remaining forces and began to regroup, Earth's fleet was still reeling from the heavy losses incurred during the raid on Xilones. Admiral Taylor, exhausted but determined, knew the Alliance would come for Earth next. Their retaliation would be swift and brutal. The heart of the war now lay in the most vulnerable place possible, humanity's home. In a meeting with President Vargas, Admiral Taylor laid out a somber picture. "The Alliance has been wounded, but they are far from finished. They will strike at Earth to finish what they started. If we cannot stop them, Earth will fall." Vargas's face was a mask of resolve. "We can't let that happen." "What are our options?" "We don't have many," Taylor admitted. "Our fleet is nearly depleted, and Earth's defenses are stretched thin. But we have one final ace to play." General Hayes had long believed in the power of humanity's ingenuity. If the human fleet could be revitalized, even with a fraction of its former strength, there was a chance. Engineers had spent weeks working on a daring new weapon, a colossal superlaser capable of disrupting the power of an entire fleet. If they could deploy it in time, it could turn the tide once more. The catch was that it required immense energy that would only be available for one shot. "We can't waste it," Taylor said, her voice steady. "This is humanity's last chance to force the Alliance to the negotiating table." But the window of opportunity was shrinking. As the Alliance regrouped, they sent scouts to Earth's outer reaches, searching for the location of the human fleet. The enemy was closing in, and Earth's defenses, though strong, were still no match for the full might of the Alliance's war machine. In a final desperate move, Admiral Taylor made a bold decision. She ordered the human fleet to converge on Earth, risking everything on the chance that the Alliance would underestimate their resolve. Humanity's fleet, battered but unbroken, would make its stand in Earth's orbit. It was a gamble that could either end in total victory or complete annihilation. The night before the final battle, a quiet urgency filled the fleet's ranks. Soldiers and civilians alike gathered in their ships, preparing for what was likely to be their last fight. There were no speeches, no grand gestures. Just a quiet understanding that humanity's future depended on this final stand. General Hayes, standing in the war room aboard the Elysium, spoke quietly to his commanders. "Tomorrow, we make our stand. We fight with everything we have. And we remind the galaxy that humanity is not a species to be underestimated." As Earth's forces assembled in orbit, the Alliance arrived. Their fleet, larger and more organized than ever before, hung ominously above the blue and green planet. The fate of billions would be decided here, in the depths of space, where technology and resolve would clash with the stakes higher than ever before. The battle began with an overwhelming barrage of fire from the Alliance, their supercharged plasma cannons tearing into Earth's defense grid. The sky above Earth darkened as human ships scattered, engaging in a desperate series of evasive maneuvers, attempting to avoid the deadly rain of fire from the Alliance's flagship, the Talon. In the chaos of battle, humanity's final weapon, the superlaser, was primed and ready. It was a weapon of last resort, and its success was uncertain. The plan was simple: human forces would distract the Alliance long enough for the Elysium to position itself at the optimal firing range. The Alliance, confident in their superiority, underestimated the sheer determination of humanity's will. As the superlaser charged up, a devastating exchange of fire between the human and Alliance fleets ensued. Ships exploded, and debris littered the black expanse of space. Earth's defenses were faltering, but humanity refused to give in. And then, at the moment when it seemed all hope was lost, the Elysium took its shot. The beam from the superlaser streaked across space like a comet of destruction. It slammed into the Talon with unimaginable force, tearing through its shields and rupturing its core. The flagship's destruction sent shockwaves through the Alliance fleet, throwing their ships into disarray. For the first time in the war, the Alliance fleet was uncertain, unsure of how to proceed. Admiral Taylor knew this was their chance. With the Talon out of commission, the Alliance's leadership was fractured. Human ships moved quickly, exploiting the confusion, striking at vulnerable Alliance vessels with precision and speed. The battle turned, humanity pushing back with everything they had. For the first time in years, the Alliance fleet began to retreat. One by one, their ships broke off, disorganized and unwilling to continue the fight. The humans had done it; against all odds, they had turned the tide. As the last of the Alliance ships fled the solar system, Admiral Taylor allowed herself a rare moment of relief. Humanity had survived, and in doing so, had proven something that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations to come, that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how impossible the odds, humanity would never back down. The war was over. The last remnants of the Alliance's once mighty fleet had fled, limping into the void of space, nursing their wounds and retreating to the far reaches of the galaxy. Earth, battered and scarred, stood victorious. Humanity had endured, and against all expectations, it had emerged not only unbroken but stronger for the struggle. Admiral Taylor stood on the bridge of the Elysium, gazing out at the remnants of the battle. The once glorious flagships of the Alliance now drifted in space, their hulking remains a testament to the strength of human resolve. The battle had been hard fought, but humanity had won. For the first time in history, a species that had once been considered a fledgling among the stars had stood against the greatest military power the galaxy had ever known, and emerged victorious. As word spread across Earth and its colonies, the celebration began. Victory was sweet, but the cost had been high. Thousands of lives had been lost, and entire fleets had been sacrificed. The scars of war would take years, perhaps decades, to heal. But humanity had survived, and in doing so, had gained something far more valuable: respect. President Vargas stood before the assembled leaders of Earth, her voice steady, though filled with pride. Today, we are not just survivors. Today, we are a new force in the galaxy. We have shown the universe that humanity's will cannot be broken, that we will fight for our home, our people, and our future. The Federation of Colonies, a coalition of Earth's colonies that had been instrumental in the war effort, stood behind her. Representatives from Mars, the Moon, Titan, and even far-flung colonies in the Outer Rim, all stood together, united as never before. In the face of the Galactic Alliance's overwhelming power, humanity had formed a bond that was unshakable. But with the war over, a new challenge emerged: what now? The Alliance had been defeated, but their reach was still vast, and there were other factions out there, other powers that had watched humanity's rise with varying degrees of interest and fear. Some would seek to capitalize on the war-torn galaxy, while others might still see humanity as a threat to their status quo. Admiral Taylor and President Vargas knew that while the immediate threat of the Alliance had passed, the future would be just as challenging. Humanity, once isolated and unknown, had now proven itself to be a force to be reckoned with. the question was no longer if humanity would survive, but how it would navigate the galaxy that now saw it as a legitimate power. "We need to be prepared for what comes next," Taylor said, her gaze focused on the stars. "Our victory has proven that we can stand against the greatest powers the galaxy has to offer. But we must also remember our roots, the same qualities that made us strong in the first place. Innovation, resilience, and the belief that no matter how impossible the odds, humanity will always find a way." President Vargas nodded. "We will not forget. But we must also look forward. We need to rebuild, to forge new alliances, and to establish ourselves as a peaceful power in the galaxy. This war has shown us our potential, but the true test will be what we do with that potential." The galaxy, once dominated by the Galactic Alliance, was now a place of uncertainty. The remaining factions, some alien, some human, now saw Earth and its colonies as both a potential ally and a threat. Diplomacy would be as important as the strength of humanity's military. It was clear that humanity could no longer afford to remain isolated, nor could it afford to become complacent. The future of the galaxy would be shaped by humanity's actions in the years to come. But for now, Earth and its people could rest. The war was over. The children of Earth, who had grown up hearing stories of humanity's survival, would grow up knowing that their home was a place of strength, a place where humanity had stood against the galaxy's most powerful forces and prevailed. And with that, a new era began. The next chapter in humanity's journey was just beginning. The stars, once a place of fear and mystery, were now open for exploration. New horizons beckoned, not just for Earth, but for all of humanity's colonies. The galaxy, once a place where humanity was a footnote in its vastness, now had to reckon with the fact that it had just awakened a force that would shape its future. Admiral Taylor, standing once more at the helm of the Elysium, looked out at the stars with a sense of hope and determination. The war was over, but the journey had only just begun. And this time, humanity would chart its own course. For the first time in history, humanity had shown the galaxy that it would no longer be a mere observer. It would be a player. And the galaxy would never be the same.